Hi, my name is Helen, and today I'll be discussing the connections between the core concepts of backstory or background, perspective, and character development in writing. So, first, let's talk about backstory. Backstory includes who are the main characters at the start of the story before anything in the story has occurred. Basically, what factors have formed these characters or led them up to this point or situation before anything else has ever happened. More simply put, backstory is the history or background, everything that happened prior to the story starting. So let's look at an example real quick. Arantha was born into a rich family but ran away 5 years before the story started and is returning only because his grandmother, who was kind to him, is dying. So this is Arantha's backstory. At the very start of the story, Arantha has returned home. Well, why? His backstory tells us the answer to this. Because his grandmother is dying, and it also tells us that he hasn't been home because he ran away, so we know already from the backstory there will be some tension there. And backstory is important because it helps us readers understand things that have already happened and why characters or events or circumstances are the way they are in the story. Backstory also helps to drive and form our next core concept, which is perspective. And perspective is how characters view or interact with certain things, people, or subjects based on their experiences, personality, and character traits. Okay, so many people, when they hear about perspective, and this is me as well, think about point of view. But to be clear, perspective is not point of view. Even though people often conflate them, they are two completely separate concepts. Point of view refers to the narrator and how the story is told, and it is basically how is the narrator telling the story. Do they use pronouns that refer to themselves like we or I, or do they use he or they, or do they talk directly to the reader using you? That is point of view. Perspective is more world view. Based on personality and experiences in life, everyone views things differently, and that is what we try to show when we show a character's perspective. For example, rich people may view a weekend at Disney World as a casual trip of not much significance. To a poor person, though, Disney World may be like a dream, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. That's perspective. And like I said before, backstory helps inform perspective. But how? Well, the events a person goes through in life changes and shapes their worldview or perspective. Like the example I just mentioned, a person who has lived as a poor person will view finances and related things like food, luxuries, and vacations differently from a person who has been rich their whole life. Although that, of course, is also affected by how their parents raised them, which is also part of their backstory. So let's look at another example. Lottie was pushed into a pond as a child and developed a terror of water. Letty was pushed as a child to tackle challenges head-on and is an avid advocate of swimming and constantly tries to drag Lottie to a swimming pool. Lottie avoids Letty, who chases after her. So here, Lottie's backstory is that she was pushed into the pond and became afraid of water. This backstory drives Lottie's perspective of Letty. She sees Letty subconsciously as a danger, making her someone to be avoided. Letty's backstory is that she was pushed to face challenges. This influences her perspective of how she views people like Lottie. She sees her as a challenge before she sees her as a person, causing her to keep chasing after her and try to force her view on her. Now, both backstory and perspective contribute to character development. Now, the first thing many people, myself included, think of when they hear character development is how the character grows or otherwise changes throughout a story. While this is part of it, it is not the only factor that goes into character development. For instance, both backstory and perspective also go into character development, which is the building up of a character. into a fleshed out and complex character like a real human. Backstory tells us why. Why is this character this way? Perspective tells us how does that backstory and the character's personality and traits cause them to view or interact with everything else. They are part of building the character. Other factors that drive character development are personality, motivations, quirks, growth or devolution, and many others that I have not mentioned here. Now let's talk about an example. So you may or may not recognize this character. This is Dobby from Harry Potter, and if you've read the books and seen the movies, you'll know he gets more time in the books than the movies, particularly the fourth one, Goblet of Fire. From the first time we see Dobby, he's developed thoroughly. His backstory is that he is a house elf, and house elves were treated better after Voldemort's defeat. This drives his perspective that Harry Potter is a hero, someone to admire and love. This in turn drives his motivation to save Harry Potter and reveals that he is brave, because we also see that Dobby is terrified and driven by that fear even when the object of that fear is not present. There's also growth. Dobby's freedom removes his fear, giving him the strength to actively fight the person he is afraid of. In the fourth book, Dobby has fully embraced freedom as shown in his unwillingness to work without pay. Another perspective of Dobby, driven by his backstory, is that in his initial appearance, he cries when Harry asks him to sit down. Nobody ever treated him like an equal, and it's very apparent and shown. So, what is the point of me relaying this? Well, all of these are the kinds of touches that go into good character development. I could also go on about how backstory and perspective drive character development of Winky the House Elf in a different direction, but then this video would be dragging on, so to move on. This is just a diagram to help sort of visualize how perspective, backstory, and character development are tied together. Perspective and backstory are full core concepts of their own, but also part of or tools used in character development, and backstory is one factor driving perspective. So you can see this in how character development includes many things not encompassed in backstory and perspective are full concepts of their own, but included in character development, and they are linked with backstory driving perspective by the arrow. So, a hopefully more pleasing visualization, we can kind of think of character development as a tree with roots and soil being backstory that grounds and feeds character development. We can see perspective and other factors as leaves and fruit. They are part of the tree, the character development, but also may change with the direction you take your character development in. We can think of events like rain. The rain can help the character grow, or if it's acid rain, send the character in the opposite direction. So to sum it all up, backstory can influence perspective. Backstory and perspective are part of character development. Backstory is history. Perspective is not point of view, but worldview. And character development is building a fully fleshed out character. Real quick, the two images that were obviously not made by me within this slideshow were developed by Jason Wong 23 and Jacob Jensen on Unsplash, where they have posted these pictures for free use. Those are the links if you would like to go visit their sites. So, that's it. Thank you for staying with me through this video. I hope you learned from and enjoyed it. Bye.